UGA Sports, which is part of Yahoo Sports Network Rivals. Paul Maharry, welcome into the game here in Tuscaloosa. I hope you're well.
Man, thank you so much, Ryan. It's always good to be back on with you.
Absolutely. It's been a topic of conversation. I'm really tired of talking about Maurice Smith, but the SEC, I think, just forced us to talk about it a little bit more today.
I think so, too, and I think the big thing with this, it's been dragging on for a long time, and like you said, I'm sure you're sick of talking about it, and it's starting to get that way, over here in Athens, too. Nick Saban kind of let it out that he was going to grant a full release, kind of put it all in the SEC's hands. The SEC pretty much looked at it, I guess, and said, if we don't do this, it's going to be a bigger storm even, than it is right now. So they granted the release for Maurice Smith, and here we are.
When I look back, and tell me if you – this is where I have a problem with, I guess, some of the release here from SEC for just a couple of minutes. They try to make this about academics. Paul, I think we all know that this is not about academics. It's about athletic performance. Would you agree?
I think so, too. And one point, one argument of this whole thing is, are you going to hold a kid back that wants to go somewhere? Now, that opens up a whole wormhole. What is graduate transfer is going to be the new thing. Is that going to be the new hot thing, kind of like how it is transfers in basketball? I mean, there's 800-some-odd kids each year in basketball that are transferring schools. You don't see that on the football side, but is that going to become a thing? And that's something a lot of coaches are real hesitant about. Not even just transferring between SEC to SEC school. It's more about just the whole transfer explosion that could take place within college football.
Paul, this is Martin Houston. And you just hit on it. It's the publicity of this, I think, is going to elevate transferring, especially among grad transfers. My question to you is, did Sankey open a can of worms because he made it all about academics? We know that scholarships are 1-year renewables. So if it's about academics, how do you tell a kid who chose a school not because of the coach, and that kid says not because of football, but because of academics? How do you keep them from transferring when they see another opportunity? So I think this is so much bigger than Maurice Smith.
Yeah, I think so, too, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with that. When are you going to be able to say no? Kirby Smart said no to A.J. Terman going down to Miami. Yes, he was an undergrad. It's a little different than a graduate transfer who's already graduated from the school. My big thing is, you can look at it from a broader aspect, too, as just being students in general. Let's say that a student gets a full grant to University of Alabama, 100% scholarship, and they want to transfer to Auburn because the major has gotten so much better at Auburn, yada, yada, yada. You don't stop that, kid from transferring. So why is it different with football? That's an argument that people are making,
Yeah, Paul Maharry right now, team reporter, recruiting analyst for UGAsports.com, part of the Rivals.com website, Yahoo Sports, right now inside the game. Paul, in your opinion, when you look at it from maybe an outside of the Georgia perspective here for just a couple of minutes, is this embarrassing for Nick Saban because he stood for the rule last Thursday, Sunday when he met with the media, and then on Wednesday he said he didn't have another comment, but he's going to put it in the SEC hands. In your opinion, did the SEC make Nick Saban and Alabama look bad?
I think that the whole situation just looks bad in general. I don't know if the SEC necessarily did it, but, he had his set viewpoints on it, and then something changed. I think what happened was the story just got too big. And I think that what happened was it made national news. ESPN's running it. There's stories everywhere about this. And I think it just got too big and too big of a headache and kind of took away from, Nick Saban being able to focus on his players and his players being able to focus on football because they're all thinking about Maurice Smith and what's happening with that. Does it hurt Nick Saban in the long run? Potentially, yeah, because, you have kids that are looking at it, well, am I going to have to go through this where, I'm treated like an outsider, things of that nature. Overall, in general, whatever school it happens to, and the way that it happened this way, yeah, it's kind of an embarrassment. But it's Nick Saban, though. You learn to trust him, and he will just get you back on the right foot, I think.
Paul, as we dive a little bit deeper into this conversation here, I don't know the answer to this, and I mean, I'm asking a question because I don't know if it's legal or illegal or if it's a violation. But Kirby Smart is not allowed to talk to the the kid here at Alabama without Alabama giving him a release, correct?
There is a stipulation. There is a permission to contact form that I think Maurice Smith filled back a couple weeks ago, and that is the form that allows certain coaches to contact him. I think.
But if Alabama wasn't giving him a release, surely they were not going to give him a release to talk to Georgia, right?
Sure. I think the situation was extremely weird, just from beginning to end, this whole thing. But I think there was a permission to contact form that Nick Saban did fill out. Now, I guess Nick Saban didn't have any, way of. I guess he didn't want Maurice to leave, but I think it's one of those where if you tell him you can't contact any other coaches, well, then that opens up a whole other can of worms that I guess Nick Saban didn't want. So,
Paul, when I look at this, this didn't start 3 weeks ago. This kid was dead set on going to Georgia for some reason, okay? And the coaches who benched him here are the coaches over there. They're the ones that made that decision. But I want to flip the script just a little bit. Ryan and I have talked about this, and I want to get your thoughts on it. You're a Georgia guy. How do you think the national media, the media as a whole, would be viewing this if Nick Saban was going after one of Kirby's grad transfers, a guy who was going to be starting for Georgia? Think about this, starting for Georgia this year, and Nick Saban came out, yes, I've been contacting the player, and I want him to come play at my school. How do you think the media would be viewing Nick Saban?
Probably the same way, but Nick Saban's held under a different spotlight. That's what happens when you win national championships like that. You're held to a different account.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. And Nick Saban is not a bad thing. I mean, he's probably the greatest coach in college football right now. So when anything that you do, that's going to be glorified. It's just the bottom line. So
right.
If it was the other way around, I'm sure that, the story would have blown up just as big, if not bigger. But that's what happens when you have a coach of that caliber coaching your football team.
He's a bully either way.
Paul Maharry right now, final question for you. Can you help us understand how the Georgia fans are viewing this? Are they viewing that Kirby Smart stood up to Nick Saban and now he's won?
I guess you could say that. Yeah, I think most Georgia fans are looking at it. They don't have that much depth in the secondary, at least from what we've seen so far. And they're looking at it as another piece to the puzzle that they're potentially trying to build there in Athens under first-year coach Kirby Smart. I think with adding Maurice Smith, it puts a lot of things into play. You can switch up those 5 guys that you had starting in your secondary, add him to the mix, put him at safety, corner, star, whatever you want to do. Now, does that affect team camaraderie? You got to look at it that way. Is this a double-edged sword for Kirby Smart? Hey, you're bringing in a guy. You've been telling me I'm starting this whole time, and this guy's coming in. He's not coming over here to ride the bench here at Georgia. So that's one of those things that those guys get paid a lot more than I do, and you, Ryan, to make those decisions to bring in a guy like that. And when you do, sometimes it affects team chemistry and it backfires on you. So, you got to kind of look at it from that angle too. Is this completely helping Georgia? Absolutely. It's a nice body that can play football, and he's going to be starting at Alabama. But at the same time, you got 5 kids that pretty much already had the positions locked down. Now you're throwing in a guy like Maurice Smith. It's going to, come out. Somebody's going to be upset. That's for sure.